This is the Kipsta CLR Elite Jaguar Fury, which is a damn cool name for a football boot, if you ask me. And this is only €80 and is potentially the €80 football boot that you have been seeing on the feet of Antoine Griezmann. Now, I do have to say that I don't know this for sure. I cannot confirm this. I do not have any inside information. I did ask Kipsta, straight out asked them, and they were like, we're not saying anything. So they didn't explicitly say no, but they also gave me absolutely nothing whatsoever. However, doing a little detective work, if you take the Blackout boots that Griezmann has been wearing recently, and you take a look particularly at the sole plate and compare it here to this CLR Elite, it looks very, very similar. So Griezmann wearing a €80 speed boot from a brand that, while huge, Decathlon is massive, really hasn't made that many waves in the football boot world yet. Well, that is interesting, and that is a boot worth reviewing. Now, I said the thing that tipped me off about these potentially being the Griezmann boots was the outsole, so let's start with that. And you can see this definitely has a stud pattern, very reminiscent of what you might expect to see from Adidas. The 3 studs down either side, the support stud in the middle, and then your 4 studs in the heel. This is nicely aggressive. These studs are low enough profile to give you some good traction, and generally I like it. The multi-directional movement is good, the forward motion is good. I might have liked this stud here and maybe these to be a slightly taller, but I have been using this on AG without too many issues. I say too many issues, we'll get onto that very, very shortly, but I found it to be fine. Now, Kipsta do have a huge range of outsoles available. So if you're going to wear it on AG, go and buy the AG outsole. I just happen to have the FG. I play a lot on AG pitches, or I test a lot on AG pitches, so that just happens to be where it's been. So the stud pattern I'm going to give an up to. And the outsole itself says here, Pebax powered. Now, Pebax is essentially a brand that produces a type of plastic that a lot of companies use on their outsoles. Puma, I think, were the most recent big brand to do it. I could be wrong. Correct me in the comments. And that should be an indicator of a really high quality outsole. And the materials very well could be. But for me, considering this is also supposed to be their top end speed boot, albeit at €85, there is just not enough structure. Fortunately, has that bend point right in the middle. I'm not putting a lot of effort in for that to be the natural bend point. Now, I'm not going to get on this the same way that I got on the Nike Tiempo Legend 10 Pro for doing the same thing, because that's a €150 boot. This is an €85 boot, so it gets more of a pass, but this is definitely not something that I would want to see. It does have, when you're wearing them, a slightly more natural bend point up the front here, but it is too flexible and you still get way too much rotation for my liking. And for €85, I'm not getting too upset about it, but I would really like to see more structure there. It's going to add to the overall feeling of quality. It is going to make the boot feel more stable. And back to the studs that I mentioned a second ago, I do think that one of the reasons this is so flexible isn't necessarily a design choice. It's just the materials that are used in this area are too thin. They need kind of bulking up, because in these positions here, I was definitely getting stud pressure on that harder AG surface. Now, of course, not an AG boot. That's on me for wearing them on an AG pitch. But I just feel like a more solid sole plate that gives you a better snapback, more responsiveness, is going to benefit this boot massively in the future. And I want to see Kipsta make more and more and more boots and be a bigger and bigger player in the market, because the more competition we have, the better. And that is my That's my down. I'm going to give that a down. I'm going to give the stud pressure a down, and I am going to give the flexibility in the outsole a down. They've potentially tried to save a bit of weight here too by taking out maybe a little too much material to go for this lightweight vibe. Fully respect that, but I think the boot would have been better with the additional structure. So with that in mind, let's weigh the boots. Yes, I know I constantly say weight doesn't matter, but Kipsta have made a huge deal out of the weight, so it'd be remiss of me not to weigh them. Let's get them on the scales. And we can see here that these come in at 188 grams. This is in a US 8, UK 7. And that is very light. That is top end speed boot light for a boot at 85 euros. It is impressive. I will give them that much. Let's talk about the upper. So the upper here does look a little like a synthetic. It even feels a little bit like a synthetic when you strike the ball. And that is because of this top layer on the boot, which is essentially a plastic. It's like a thin plastic top coating. What this does mean is that it is very water resistant and gives you an old style synthetic feeling when you do hit the ball and with your touch. But it is also surprisingly grippy. I expected this to be very, very slick and very, very smooth, but it's just not. There's just an element of grip to it that really kind of meshes with the ball. It's very, very interesting. Think slightly sticky synthetic, especially in dry weather. That's the best description I can give you when it comes to the touch, which is also reasonably direct. However, that is impacted by the fit, but the fit is something we will talk about in a minute. The boot is, however, not a synthetic. It is a mesh base pretty much from this point forward. So from this seam all the way forwards, it is a mesh base that is incredibly soft. This is a very, very soft upper and far better than you might expect, again, from a boot at 85 euros. In so many areas, this absolutely exceeds expectations. While we're here, we will touch on durability slightly, and you can see that we have extra taping around the toe of the boot here. I'll see if I can show you on this camera as well. And we have this here to essentially enhance durability, ensure that these elements stay bonded together and that you don't get damage on the toe of the boot or anywhere around here, which is a frequent area where boots are going to start to fall apart. Kipsta seem to be really proud of their durability elements, and they even give all of their boots an XP rating. The XP rating of this is around 140, and what that means is that Kipsta say that these boots should last for 140 training sessions or matches, which I think is very impressive if it holds up to be true. I have had no issues so far, but I just think that's a cool thing that they do. Back to talking about the rest of the upper. So from the seam backwards, you have a much more solid construction. And this does help the boot feel a little bit more responsive and stop any kind of rollover over the sole plate. So that is welcome. And then into the heel as well. While we're here, the heel, you can see, is definitely deep enough. It doesn't feel too shallow, which is again a problem with boots at this price point. And overall, the padding that is in the back is not excessive, and it's not been done to that really chunky level that you frequently get on takedowns. The padding feels premium, and the material that's used, this synthetic suede through the back, is also really nice. So the heel I will give an up to, because I think for the price they've done an excellent job here. The only other thing I want to touch on with the upper is that the actual thickness of the boot is not excessively thick either. Again, something you get a lot on boots at this price point is a very thick upper. Not the case here. It is solid, and it's certainly not razor or paper thin, but it is definitely thin enough, which helps again that flexibility. So we'll give the flexibility an up. We'll also give the touch on the ball an up. I think we've got some real positives here in the upper. Let's move on to the fit, and we'll start by answering the question I am going to get asked the most is this good for wide feet? And quite simply, the answer is yes. There is a lot of width naturally in this boot, an awful lot of material, and that all runs all the way through the midfoot up into the toe box here. There is also an awful lot of volume in the boot. Now, width-wise, if you have a wide foot, this is great. Even the stretch through the collar area here is going to allow you to get a wider foot in when normally that might be a problem. However, the width and the volume as a whole mean I don't necessarily get a fit that is close and tight enough for what I want. So we have this kind of direct, solid, barefoot style touch, but I still can't get the boot to fit me as closely as I would like. And despite the upper being very soft, it's not molding to the shape of my foot. And part of that is because I'm not necessarily filling the boot out as much as I should. Now, of course, a lot of that is my foot type, but I have a very neutral foot in terms of width. So if you have a wider foot, this could work out really, really well for you. If you have a narrow foot, you are going to expect, or you should expect, some dead space and maybe some odd bulges in the boot. But if you can get this filled out, I think it could be really, really excellent. That, of course, leads us to lockdown, and we do have a really nice deep lacing system here, so I've got to commend Kipsta for that. It's not particularly wide, but you do get a reasonable amount of adjustability, and you do feel like you can pull a lot of the boot in around this area. It does tend to just pull this very upper part though, and you can end up again with maybe a little bulge down in this area if your foot doesn't fill out the space because of all that extra width. So the lockdown is fine, and again, for a boot at this price point, I'm not really going to complain about it at all, but I'm not going to give it an up, I'm not going to give it a down. It's a well thought out lacing system that delivers a perfectly adequate amount of lockdown for a boot at this price point, and everything that I've mentioned so far puts it in a position where it absolutely competes with all the other boots at this particular price. So that's kind of a win all around. And I think before we get into talking about the sizing, I definitely want to make the point that there are a lot of elements in here that go far beyond what you would expect from a boot at this particular price point. And there's a couple of elements that, if they can be improved, would make this boot really, really desirable. And I think for a lot of people, this is a boot that you should absolutely consider. I think they've done a lot of good here, and they're a welcome addition to the market at around this particular price point. But if you do want to buy these, you of course need to know what size to get, and it is fairly straightforward. You want to pick up whatever your normal Nike size would be. So I would normally wear a US 8, UK 7. That's what I've got in this. This works out just fine. There is maybe a tiny bit of room in the end that I wouldn't want, but definitely not enough to go down half a size. But please stop, wait, don't go anywhere. There is a really interesting quirk with Kipsta's sizing. These are a size 7 UK. If I was to get a size 7.5, the length would be exactly the same, but the width would change. Now, this is obviously very positive if you're looking to adjust the width of your boot, but if you're looking to get that perfect length fit, that maybe isn't helping you, and that's maybe why I have a little bit of extra room. So it's like having a width option, but only having sizing options in whole sizes. I find that really interesting, and it's definitely something you should consider when you're buying these. And if you want to buy these, or you want to check out my review of the Kipsta Viralto 3, click this video right here.